this is actually one of our biggest episodes we've done yet. So we've got 3 guests. So Mark, and Carl, welcome to the podcast.
Well, thanks for having
Thanks,
us.
Perfect. So I'm going to hand it over to you guys just to do a quick intro. So Mark, if we maybe start with you and then we can go down to everyone.
Sounds good. Thanks, Patrick, for inviting us. Hi, everyone. My name is Mark. I'm co-founder of Outlaw. By way of background, I'm a corporate lawyer by training. Prior to co-founding Outlaw, I was a corporate associate at Clifford Chance, based in the Singapore office, and I trained in London office. Then I moved to Morrison & Foster, a US firm specializing in private equity, M&A, funds, and VC work. Practiced for about 6 years. Thereafter, I left, co-founded Outlaw with Marcus. We are actually a legal consulting company. We service Web3 AI gaming companies as fractional general counsel and strategic advisors. And very excited to be here today. I'll pass the time to Mark.
Sounds good. Yes. Likewise, I'm a co-founder of Outlaw as well, Mark. Both Marks, as you can see. I think I started deep in Web3 legal early in 2019, and then been in the international firm since then. Finally started Outlaw, ditched our suits with Mark, and now we are doing 0 to 1 legal for most projects. I think we've enjoyed being on the ground with projects a lot more, and that is mainly our focus, just helping them go through the entire time frame, legal and strategy as well.
It's great being here, Pietri. Thanks for inviting us. My name's Carl. I'm co-founder of Lemma, which is a company based in the Cayman Islands that helps foundations, companies with operations. We take them after the legal side. We generally take them from getting ready for TGE and then strategically helping them to have a successful TGE and growing them beyond that. Before this, I was an auditor at Deloitte in South Africa, the US, and in the Cayman Islands, which is where I now live and stay. And it's absolute pleasure being here.
Perfect. Well, I think to kick things off, maybe Mark, you guys are based in Singapore. You see the Asian market and what's going on there. I'd love to sort of get your insights. What are you seeing in the Asian market, especially in the Web3 industry? Sort of what's exciting and how's all things going?
Yeah, maybe let me kick off first and Mark can chime in as necessary. So what we're seeing right now, in terms, I think a lot of founders right now, they're concerned with fundraising, and that definitely ties in with the market itself. End 2024, the fundraising market was still very lively, very buoyant. Right now, I think VCs are starting to taper off. We see less primary investments into illiquid investments, but more OTC deals where even VCs, traditional VCs are coming in, wanting to get a pie of the OTC deals with lesser vesting schedule, a shorter vesting schedule, a shorter cliff period, and of course with the end goal that they can exit as successfully as possible. That's one. Second, I think a lot of founders are now approaching TGE because it's always about timing, right? But no one can actually time the market. So I think a lot of founders are getting ready for TGE in Q2, Q3 this year. And I think that's the whole purpose of this podcast, to enlighten founders in terms of the steps and the pitfalls and what to watch out.
Yeah, I think to add on to Mark, the Asian market generally tracks the US market. We follow them a little, but I guess we're a bit slower because we kind of see how the US markets look at things before reacting. So US markets are very into stable coins now. We do see that coming a bit up in the Asian markets as well. And I think from past years, from 2018, 2019, the Asian market is now very sophisticated as well. Very, I would say they now realize that they require a lot more foundation, a lot more groundwork as well. So they're looking into, for example, they used to just set up a company to run things. Now it's very common for them to have the entire setup as well, foundations, using Lemma, for example. They do tokenomics and stuff. I would say back in the days, not something entirely important, but now it's very important for a lot of the projects as well. They see the economics of it. They see that they have to set up a proper legal structure. And I think that is where we're going towards. In terms of big topics, I would say stable coins, maybe even a look towards AI, as well as RWA, but that has been around for a while as well. So excited to see where this goes.
No, I definitely agree with you in terms of the space maturing. I think a few years ago, it's like, let's go, let's get this thing running.
Yeah, that's
These
right.
days, everyone is much more considerate in what they're doing. 6 months, we're getting everything ready, getting it all in place, which is good to see. Maybe almost on that track, what are the things that you guys see founders not thinking about or missing most of the time when you're working with them?
Yeah, I think that's an absolute good question. A lot of the founders that we have had the opportunity to support with, they always have a technical background, and that's what we see the market. So I would say a few things that we appreciate that founders should have some information on, setting up the proper structure, knowing why they are setting up entities, where they're supposed to set up in, not simply following what the market trend is guiding them to do so. A lot of them would just say, I want Cayman BVI because that's tested, but then we'll ask, have you considered why this is suitable for you guys? Why not other jurisdictions? That's one. Second, we have dealt with several founders' internal disputes last year when founders do not actually have founders' agreement. And we would highly suggest, yes, it may not be a paramount consideration right from start because founders are concerned about product, concerned about fundraising, but please do get your founders agreement because some of the top tier VCs would likewise request for that, either as a condition precedent or a condition subsequent to funding. Third, I think a lot of founders have this mistake or preconception that TGE, an eventual listing on the centralized exchange, is the end game, right? In fact, no. I think that's the start of your worry because as we have seen in this cycle, it's very hard to identify a project that has successfully listed on a centralized exchange without suffering in terms of its price of the tokens, right? We would highly suggest building up a strong community, seeing longevity in your project itself, making sure that the product can last throughout the cycles. I think that's the strategy that all founders should adopt going forward.
Yeah, I think I completely agree. And I think just to add on something perhaps we might discuss a bit more later in the podcast, I think a lot of founders as well are looking at since starting up, they might require this independence in terms of advisors or in terms of even directors to help keep some checks and balances in place because as we've been seeing, projects which are just founder run, just within that echo chamber, they might result in certain problems down the line. So this independence and advisors as well as directors might play a big role in the future as well. Yeah.
No, I mean, I'd say it's very interesting. I mean, you mentioned the point that a lot of them think, TGE is it, and then you've made it. We live with these foundations after TGE and work with them continuously. And I think almost to your point, that's where you almost see that experience coming in.
Yep.
Is you're able to say, okay, these are the next things you need to look at. These are good partners. These are things to consider. I think for founders who are not that familiar with the Cayman sort of structure, where it fits into the bigger picture, can you guys maybe give us a little bit of an overview of just Cayman, where it fits in, how that works with the dev team and sort of the founders?
Yeah, definitely. So I think we need to be very clear that there are two distinct aspects to a structure itself. One is, of course, your onshore labs co, or what we term as the development company. That's where your engineers are, where you house your employees, etc. And then, of course, your token issuance structure, which is where we look to Cayman BVI, some look into Panama itself. Of course, Cayman BVI has a very strong reputation and history in the space itself. And we often, the key consideration founders should have is the virtual asset service provider regime in Cayman and BVI. I think that's the main thing you have to decide or at least consider whether or not you want to set up your token issuance structure in Cayman and BVI, right? Because if your product actually gets caught within the virtual asset service provider regime, then you would have to get a license in Cayman and or BVI, depending on how your structure is like. Second, I think the Cayman itself, and that's why we're here today, has a very strong reputation in terms of the independent directorship services that you guys provide. I think that creates a very clear dichotomy between the token offshore structure and the labs entity, because there must be clear, there should not be any conflict of interest. There must be independence between both sides. And that's the whole point of having a foundation in the first place, right? Because you want to remove control of the founders with regard to the foundation itself, vest control to a certain extent in your token holders and your independent directors. Yeah.
So I think, and the question we get a lot from founders is with that foundation, sort of, how that interacts, the directors, how that's working with the labs company. I mean, normally you've got a services agreement in place, and then you've got the foundation, and then you've got the community. What are some of the questions you get from founders, as you're setting up the structure, what are they sort of concerned about?
Yeah, so I think there are different structures right now. We would commonly place them under three buckets. One is, of course, you vest complete control in your token holders, right? So basically, we'll amend the bylaws, we'll amend the articles of association of the foundation, so as to give token holders the power to vote on proposals that the foundation issues. And then, of course, the independent directors come in because the role of you, for example, is to make sure that those proposals are sound, those proposals are in the furtherance of the best interest of the foundation itself, and there's, of course, it's not tainted by any illegality, for example. Second model is what we term as the council member. So some founders instead choose to set up different councils, for example, Treasury Council, Strategic Council, and the power in which they vest in token holders is the right to vote, replace, and or reappoint those council members, right? And council members can come from a variety of locations, for example, advisors, community members, etc. And instead of token holders voting on proposals, they vote those council members, and council members have the mandate to make decisions. Last, it's a hybrid of both, which I don't think I have to explain. I think a lot of founders, they themselves are not sure which they should go for, right? And ultimately, it's a commercial call. You have to really assess what's the best balance between vesting control in your token holders, how the community is growing itself. Do they have confidence that the community as it is can help chart the growth of the project itself? Or would it be more suitable to have council members elected by the token holders who have the experience and expertise to bring the foundation to a greater height? Yeah.
Yep. No, and I'd say it's been interesting to watch the space. I think a few years ago, everyone was, it's all on-chain, all token holders. We've evolved a little bit, realizing that, a bunch of people on the internet don't always get things done very well.
Yeah,
and it's good to see. I think we advise clients a lot of the time, get the council in place. They're that sort of leading force. They're responsible for this.
Yep.
And then over time, you can identify what you can actually push to the community.
That's correct.
And you sort of learn which decisions they should be making,
Yes.
and which decisions they potentially should not be making.
Yeah.
I mean, we had a protocol a while back where a community member put up a proposal to say this is a lending protocol, decrease collateral, increase return rates. This is going to be great for all of us. For a community member, yes, that's great. But for the protocol, that's not very good.
Yeah.
So I think putting in those controls, and one of the other things we're talking to clients at the moment is having a veto right in there, for example. Just if you've got a governance attack or something like that happening, or just cool down periods in event that those things are going to happen.
Yep.
Because you're seeing much more protocols, and I think some of the protocols will eventually start looking at each other, how can they interact with each other's DAOs voting on other DAOs.
Yep.
So I think there's a lot to consider there. Maybe almost getting back to the setup and the legal structure, getting the foundation up and running. What are some of the issues you guys have seen with the setup, as you're going through the process with clients, some of the stumbling blocks they've hit?
Yeah, I think one that instantaneously comes to mind is the issue of privacy, right? I think a lot of founders, it might be because of personal reasons, it might be because of the sensitiveness in terms of the jurisdictions where they come from, because certain jurisdictions, of course, like China, South Korea, regulations are generally stricter than other jurisdictions. So a lot of founders are concerned with that in terms of privacy, and then that brings us to the next point, which is independent directors, nominee shareholders, nominee directors. These are questions and considerations that a lot of founders have. I think they are not clear in terms of the distinction between an independent director, like yourself, Patrice, and a nominee director and nominee shareholder, right? They are very, very different in terms of the job scope, the responsibilities, the liabilities that those parties should be should be bearing, etc. So I think it's important to educate founders, and founders should know about this. Second, I think a lot of founders are unclear in terms of which jurisdictions they should set up, and primarily there are a few considerations. One, we would always advise them to seek guidance from their potential lead investors, because the lead investors themselves would have certain investment mandates or restrictions from the investment committee as to which jurisdictions their portcos can operate from or should be located in. Second, tax. I think tax is a paramount consideration. So not only your corporate income tax, but also your personal income tax. So something that founders should keep a lookout for. So these are the two key considerations that I think we have experience when guiding clients with regard to corporate structure.
No, I think sort of two things that you've mentioned that have stood out, and we've seen this be an issue. The founder agreement is a big one. We've got that as one of the tick lists. Have you guys got an agreement? Because we've dealt with founder fallout.
Yes.
And it's strange when they try to pull the foundation into that, and you're like, no, the foundation is completely independent, guys.
Exactly, yeah.
But the tax point is also very difficult because we've seen founders who didn't get good tax advice ended up with massive tax bills, and they're in a very weird financial position. And that's very bad for the protocol because you've got a founder with these huge liabilities potentially that they didn't consider and didn't think about. So I think very, very practical advice there. Carl, to throw it over to you a little bit, after we've got the foundation sort of established, you've got directors, everything else appointed, normally Lemma then steps into the picture and you start working with the team. I think the first thing is TGE that they're focusing on. What are some of the things that you start working with them to get to that point?
Yeah, no, of course. When token is as we know in the world of crypto. I think after both parties have started, it's really setting that foundation up for success from day one. And a key part about that is understanding what the vision is of the foundation. And that informs critical decisions in the early stages. If the vision is it's a very tight-knit foundation that's very small, then you'd set up a structure surrounding that from an operational perspective that matches that. That might be a singular Slack channel, and that's where you run everything from, and generally emails and Slacks, that's it. Versus, and we work with foundations like the Ink Foundation that's far larger. And in that instance, that means you generally have a full Slack platform. You have Google Drives that's set up and operational for all of them, emails for every person that's part of that foundation operations, and you have internal policies, workflows, and processes that's built out for a large group structure of people. After that, we generally move into, and this is the TGE element. It's getting you ready for TGE. Engaging market makers is a critical piece. On which centralized exchanges do you want to list on? And that matters in terms of which market makers you can get. Certain market makers only work with you if you are listed on a tier 1 exchange. If you can't get a tier 1 exchange due to funding or constraints on your side, you have to start looking at other possible solutions on that side. And then getting ready for TGE day one. I tell this quite often to our clients. A good TGE is a boring TGE because it means everything flowed exactly the way it should have. But you don't get that without going through the motions of making sure you've got all of the boxes lined up. Everybody understands what you're doing, when we're doing it, where are we moving our tokens to, and everybody else that's receiving the tokens is also ready for it. A key example about this is you don't want to just transfer tokens to your market maker without doing a test transaction first. If you're doing your TG in the US and your market maker, the recipient is sitting in Singapore, and I'm doing mine at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, that is 11 midnight Singapore time. The person who's going to confirm that they've received the test transaction probably isn't awake at that time. Suddenly you've got that slight delay built in. So we genuinely work with our teams in order to ensure that in cases like that, we have build in sufficient time, or we have them on the line at the appropriate time so that we don't have that as a delay. You want that thing. TG is not a bell you can unring. So you want to, when that bell rings, you want it to ring as loudly and as hard as possible for success. And I think that that's what Lemma really brings to the table, is that knowledge and expertise from working with 30 plus clients and helping them achieve a successful TGE.
I think it's very important. And I think a lot of teams, as you were saying, you're working with technical people, and the technical people aren't thinking about what agreements do I need in place, what infrastructure do I need. If the foundation has a multi-sig, have we set up that multi-sig, done tests on all of the signers, made sure everything is actually working, and then the team is like, okay, we're ready to TGE, but there's so many other steps. And I think knowing those right partners, market making agreements, getting legal counsel to sort of review those agreements, go through everything, will sort of cover some of those points. I think post TGE then, Carl, what do you sort of work on after the TGE? Because as we said earlier, I think a lot of people focus on that point and they don't really think about everything afterwards.
Yeah. TG is the first step, not the last step.
That's right. Yes.
I think that we've seen a large change when it comes to post TGE. Initially, it was very much we're going to launching a grants program and full-on governance. And to Mark's point earlier, governance now might be a council that you vote in. There's still steps in order to get that council process working. The council still needs to meet frequently in order to perform the duties that the DAO is expecting of them. If you are launching a grants program, what does your grants program look like? How is it run? What is the envisioned goal of that grants program? Those they don't happen in a silo. You need to sit down and work through what that means and put the structures in place in order to achieve it. And then you have to operationally run that part. And we often see that, when it comes to like grants programs, we built out Arbitrum's one, and Arbitrum received something like 50 to 100 applications a week. That is not just somebody coming on once a week for an hour, quickly reviewing 100 applications and saying, based on the following factors, we know who's getting a grant. That's a full-time job. And you have to specify what you want out of your grants programs also to ensure you get the results for the community that is appropriate. We frequently help teams with envisioning that, building out the roadmap towards getting to it, and then how to achieve success. And then it also becomes how do you communicate success to the community. I think transparency reports have really moved more to the forefront now, and it seems like a lot of projects are doing it, and I think that's very good for the ecosystem. Transparency report also is you don't invent that in a silo. What do you want it to say? What has been the key highlights? What do we want the community to know and understand what we're aiming for the next year? All of that forms part of the transparency report, and it's a collaboration effort between the labs company, the foundation company, the directors, us, and in the community as well, in order to produce one that is helpful for everybody in the system to understand. And that's where Lemma's experience and knowledge comes in, and we love working with our teams in order to achieve the goals that they want to.
And I think it almost hits on that maturing of the space.
Definitely.
It's not just a bunch of people deciding we're going to do something and launching it. You actually need legal agreements, everything in place. But I think it's a good thing because we're now seeing, the people are signatories, they've got consulting agreements, so everyone is protected both ways. If you're issuing grants, there's actually a grant agreement. It's not just money for nothing with no recourse afterwards. There's actually milestones. You're following up on the milestones. You're checking everything. The one other thing I wanted to sort of get all three of your thoughts on is airdrops or incentive programs. I think maybe first from a legal point of view, what should teams be thinking about? What are some of the pitfalls then? And then Carl, for the practical side of actually doing an airdrop.
I think for airdrops has always been something, came in the picture, lots of hype. I think some of the pitfalls or some of the things people don't understand is that most of the founders just see it as, this is it, we're going to airdrop it to founders, no implications. There isn't anything that we need to do. We're just going to do it. Like, they get what they want, the community gets what they want. But I think some of the pitfalls they face is that there are actually a lot of agreements that are now in place for even airdrops. Just to dictate, for example, the airdrop terms, the claim terms, even disclaiming of certain liabilities and stuff like that. So I think that's crucial for the founders, especially because in terms of the terms and conditions, privacy policies and stuff like that with regards to airdrop, there are actually a lot of considerations they don't think about. For example, in terms of the data they take from airdrops and stuff like that, I think that's one thing that just flies over their head. Most of the time, there are some legal implications with, for example, obtaining certain KYC data or something from the community. And if the community isn't protected, or if the founders are not protected by these privacy policies and terms, these private information might just come out to light in public. So there are a lot of these small things that founders don't really know about, which I think we've seen the space mature as we've been talking about. They now have very sophisticated airdrop terms in terms of what they can do with it, who is liable for what, tax implications, and I think that those are some things which founders have to note. Another important point as well, which I think most founders come to us, is do airdrops or for example points even, do they trigger any security law implications, or what if the token is might be a security token. So I think this is something that the space is still kind of maneuvering. There were a lot of questions about it during the airdrop phase. Now that it's a bit less, I think most people have shelved it on the back. But I think our position as legal has always been that it depends. I think that is our favorite line as legal. For now, there are a lot of gray areas. Points is great for potentially tokens which might jump into the securities position, because there isn't really a commitment to any token that is or point system let me take that again. There isn't any commitment to what the token or when the token will actually be dropped. So points is still a good kind of middle ground for most founders. But in terms of airdropping security or securitized tokens in the future, our advice is always, you need to get a legal opinion from the jurisdiction in which the token is being released, just to cover, for example, all these other legal implications which might arise from a security token. And once you get that, for example, if we get that from the BVI, token issuing company from the BVI, and then if a token opinion from the BVI lawyers come out and say that, yep, you guys are clear, founders are good. And I think that's something that founders really don't touch upon. Legal opinions are a big pain in the ass, and they come with huge costs as well. I'm not sure how much, but I think in the BVI it runs up to nearly 5 digits, maybe even 6. So they tend to just throw that to the side, but I think that it's of crucial importance for airdrops to get that opinion out, to know exactly what you're dropping out. Yeah.
I think the legal opinion is a very good point. Getting that in all of the right places, because it gives you clarity as well. That's one of the main reasons we get it, is you get someone who understands that they can draw the lines for you, and it's easy. Now you can sort of work with the founder and say, okay, these are the things we can do, these are the things we can't do. And then also communicating with founders in terms of, when you want to do something new, come and talk to us, talk to your legal counsel, because we need to understand what you're doing, where that actually fits in. Carl, on the practical side, I mean, you're the one sort of working with actually doing this.
and it's changed a lot. I think 2 years ago, an airdrop was beautiful. You just airdrop to wallets, and you walk away. It was magical. You open up your wallet the next day, you had some tokens.
Yeah, loved it.
It was fantastic.
Yeah.
I actually don't know when was the last time that happened. The sole exception of being scam tokens, that's airdropped consistently. I mean, these days it's more of a claims portal. You enter your wallet address, the wallet address gets screened, it passes the criteria, you can claim the tokens and then now it's in your wallet. That is a setup as well. You need a claims portal that's built up, that needs to be a front facing, that you can go to and exercise your right. There's also communication when it comes to it on the legal side, to make sure that is appropriately communicated. Then the communication to the community as a whole. This is what a portal is. This is where it works. On that front, you need to think about the logistics about how successful your airdrop is going to be. If you think that you're going to have a very large group of people go to your port immediately, ensuring that thing doesn't fall or break is critical. Nothing harms a token more than 50,000 users on Twitter shouting, I can't claim my tokens. Token price drops. Then it's the statement, we're working to fix this, and then 30 minutes later it's back online. Like that, it just breaks the flow of that day. KYC screening is extremely important as well, or wallet screening, not KYC, but wallet screening itself, ensuring you're not dealing with any wallets that you should not be dealing with. And then finally, one that I think quite often gets missed is, generally speaking, you have this timeline of where your claim can occur in, be it 1 year, 2 years. At some point, that timeline expires. And I've yet to find any project where every single person who could claim their tokens and you had nothing left in that claim contract. The question then becomes, the tokens you've got left, what happens with them? To which party has then the right to it? Does it go back into a pool? Can labs potentially, the foundation? There's few people think about that gymnastic area, and then you get to it, like, there's a bit of tokens left over that actually has quite a lot of value to it, and suddenly a lot of parties might say, well, I think we've got a right to it, but no one has yet defined what it is. And I think that's something that needs to be considered as well. If it's determined beforehand, far better than afterwards.
Well, I think that's actually a good segue to my next question is, as the foundation, I mean, I think a lot of the time the people think the foundation operate in isolation, but the foundation is also working with legal counsel, signing agreements, doing things day to day all the time. Where do you guys normally work with the foundation and step in? And Carl, when do you sort of work with legal counsel, sort of running this day to day? I think one of the things we've recently seen is movement, where there were some legal agreements that were reviewed, there were some questions around it, etc. So, what is the sort of day-to-day operations and interaction between legal and the foundation?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question. Being very objective, I think it's important, as mentioned before, to have independence. So the legal counsel for the foundation and the legal counsel for the labs entity should, as far as possible, be distinct. Right? I think, generally speaking, at points in time, I think just because of comfort with the working relationship between founders and existing legal counsel, there's no such dichotomy. And of course, ultimately, it boils down to the level of growth of both the labs entity and the foundation itself. At which stage should you introduce new legal counsel? Whether it's required, what's the legal counsel's role, etc. But in terms of reviewing of contracts, I think there must be clear dichotomy in terms of conflict of interest. That's critical because you want to avoid any situation in which the foundation is not at arm's length with the labs entity, and then this would create conflicts going forward.
And just to add on, I think honestly there's quite a lot of synergies or collaborations that we can do with, for example, the legal counsel would do with someone like Carol and Lemma. Even the proposals, or for example, he was just talking about the claim side, where the terms, what happens to the tokens that are not claimed after a certain time period. All these can be discussed, can be put into proper documentation, and I think even beyond just our own expertise, there are all these terms, commercial terms, which we both have a bit of experience upon. For example, we can just draft it in that these would go back to the foundation, and then subsequently, however the council members deal with it or with proposals, I think there's a lot of collaboration between what Lemma does and what we do in terms of drafting, for example, what happens, and just putting it in nice, proper, definitive language so that there's no ambiguity going forward, as we've seen that contracts with so much ambiguity, so much issues just give rise to problems down the road if it really blows up. So yeah.
It's a close relationship.
Yep.
As more often than not comes up with clients, Lemma is not legal counsel. We are not lawyers. And I suspect on the directorship side, that question comes up a lot as well, actually.
Yeah.
Generally, on a day-to-day basis, we're not engaging frequently with legal counsel because it's broad strokes operations. But anytime that you start wanting to move in a new direction, you have certain plans that you want to execute on, and that involves new legal agreements, new team members that's joining in certain specific capacities, and there's new outside third contract parties in order to build, design, or facilitate that project. Legal counsel becomes important. And legal agreements keep on changing. You brought up movement. From a market making perspective, like you have your market making agreement that was signed. Legal counsel reviewed, everybody will align on that. In 2 years' time, you might be signing a new market making agreement. Even with the same market maker, the legal agreement has not remained the same for 2 years. So at that point, it's pick up the phone, call in legal counsel and say, hi, we're signing a new market making agreement. Yes, it's the same entity as the previous one, but can you please take a review, let us know if there's any terms that we are missing or that we should be concerned about. And then it's also, ensuring that the legal advice aligns with jurisdictions. As I know, lawyers can't advise on jurisdictions they're not licensed in. So if you have a legal agreement that's signed in the Cayman Islands, and the other side is maybe in Singapore, it's important to understand that on the foundation side, you've got legal counsel for the Cayman Islands vehicle, and somebody at least there understands the Singaporean side, and we're happy with that agreement for it to be signed. So that's the close alignment when it comes to legal counsel, and I think it's a very important part about the structure and the process we're in. We've talked about the formalization of this industry. Formalization of industry means that lawyers are also involved at the right times in order to ensure that transactions are smooth and facilitated correctly.
No, I definitely agree, and I think it's having legal counsel look at something always covers you, because
yes,
people read things, they think they understand them. I've seen instances where a comma makes a difference, where I didn't think about it, etc. So it's very interesting. To wrap things off, we always sort of ask our audience 2 specific questions. So I think I'll throw it over to all of you guys. We can start on this side. Mark, what are you excited about in the industry at the moment?
Yeah, I think this word has come a lot during this discussion, which is maturity. I think the whole industry is primed for growth in terms of regulatory development. And then I think it's great to see all most governments recognizing the importance of blockchain, not just tokens, not just crypto, that there is actually value for good in the use of blockchain itself. And therefore, we can see the narratives pivoting towards, let's say, as Mark mentioned, AI infrastructure, payment infrastructure, stable coins, right? So there is great utility in these sectors itself. Second, I think it's great that as the whole industry matures, different service providers like ourselves, so like Lemma, Hash Directors, we as general counsels for different projects are coming together, recognizing the importance of collaborating to provide a one-suite service to clients at a very cost-effective yet very, very efficient and effective manner to support our clients. I think that's a great step forward. And third, with blockchain itself, I think the critical thing is borderless, right? Being borderless, right? And that's why you can see all of us here from Cayman, from Singapore, we have an office in Korea, everyone coming together. And then all people would say, where's your project from? Where are the founders from, right? The response is actually, we are global, right? We are providing use cases for clients, for users all around the world. And it's great that we see much collaboration going forward.
Mark?
Yep, I echo Mark's sentiment. Personally, I hope the NFT craze comes back again, but just because in 2021 it was a great time, yeah. but maybe just a segue to that, to see, I guess, looking forward to seeing, like Mark said, maturity. I think just a good connection between how blockchain can actually work with Web2, a bit more deliberate, more intentional collaborations, as opposed to, I think what we're seeing now is a bit of a forced kind of intersection between these two. But I think on a broad level, there's just so much that we can do together in terms of, for example, even like the traditional ledgers in Web2, all these can go into the blockchain. Simple implementation of using blockchain technology into everyday life. I think that's what I'm looking forward to. Looking forward to the AI infrastructures helping streamline a lot of our processes even. I think that's something traditionalists would balk against because it goes against what they're doing. But I'm looking forward to good AI infrastructure such that we can do things a lot simpler, a lot faster, and a lot more efficient for our clients as well.
Awesome. Carl?
I want to say revenue.
Oh, yeah. Why didn't I say that?
I think that, and I've been hearing this more and more this year, that projects are actively discussing revenue as a key metric. And how do we achieve revenue? And what does revenue even look like? And I think that bodes well for us as an industry. The idea of, well, my revenue is my token, which means token price goes up equals revenue. That is a very short-term thinking. It works for a limited amount of time, and then you're stuck. If you have no more token, you're out. You're out of business. So I'm glad that conversation is starting to happen. And I think that because that conversation is happening, that's also changing how crypto projects are being envisioned. And they are more utilized based on both users and retention of users, and giving that user something that they can't obtain in the traditional world up until now. That leaves me extremely excited and very hopeful for where we're going as an industry. I wanted to ask Pietri, what's your current, and I know you've done a couple of these, so good luck inventing another one, but curious about what you're excited about.
I think at the moment what's interesting is stablecoins. I think stablecoins might be our killer use case, where the average person starts using stablecoins and they realize this is more secure, this is faster, this is a lot easier than sending a wire, waiting a few days and paying a lot of money. Yes. And I think stablecoins might be that tipping point, that where people start using it and they're like, oh, what's this crypto thing? And then they go down the rabbit hole and they start looking at this whole ecosystem. So right now I'm excited about that, but I'd say also concerned about that because there's new legislation, governments are taking much more attention to that. So I think it's one of those things that can go both ways. potentially very good for the industry, but if it's not dealt with correctly, it can also sort of put a damper on the whole industry.
Everything is a two-edged sword.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome, guys. Well, thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you so
appreciate
much,
the time.
Petri.
And yeah, we'll see you guys in the future.
Thanks.
sure.
Thanks,
Thank you
Richie.
so much.
Appreciate